Mr. Søren Sveistrup, how did your love story with literature and writing begin?
First of all, when I was a kid, I read a lot of crime stories and a lot of Agatha Christie actually, and Sherlock Holmes, and but I never thought I should be a writer. But then later on, I studied literature at the University of Copenhagen. But in the evening, I went to the video store with my friends, and we watched a lot of movies. And I didn't know that you could write for the movies actually. So it was a big surprise for me to find out there was something called the Danish Film School. So I attended the Danish Film School and I became a screenwriter. And I liked that very much because it was a teamwork, when you work with directors and actors and so on. And it fitted me for many years. But then after doing a lot of TV shows and movies, then I decided to try to write a novel. Back then at the University of Copenhagen, I wanted to write a novel, but I didn't have the tools. I didn't know how to write. So then I took up the writing again and wrote The Chestnut Man, which is my first novel.
Yeah, it's a great novel.
Thank
And
you very much.
how was the first experience of writing the screenplay for a movie?
It was fantastic because, when you're a young person, you're not necessarily used to being heard. I mean, it's difficult to establish yourself as a screenwriter in the movie business. So I was very, very happy when it happened. It's a difficult because many people want to be writers or directors or actors. So I don't know how it is in your country, but in Denmark it's a tough competition, I would say. So when you succeed, you're very happy.
We do not have so much competition here in the movie
Mm.
industry because Romanian movie industry is quite small.
Mm.
So we wrote The Killing, which
Yes.
is a great TV series, but it has two versions, Danish and American.
Yes.
I haven't seen any of them because we have Netflix, but The Killing is not in the current offer. But I've read a lot about the both versions, and I understood that the Danish version is more profound, more detailed,
Mm.
and it gives you a more realistic feeling. These
Mm.
are the critics' impressions. While the
Mm.
American version is shorter and I don't know, it solves the crime faster. um,
Mm.
I suppose you've seen both versions.
No, I have. Of course, I've seen my own version. Yes, but
Yes.
I haven't seen the American version. Actually, I've only seen 2 or 3 episodes of the American version because the American version was produced at the same time as I wrote season 2 and 3 of The Killing in the Danish version. So it was too disturbing to watch it back then. And it's difficult for me to evaluate the American version versus the Danish version because I was very proud that the Americans did the remake. It doesn't happen a lot that you can sell a remake out of a Danish TV show. So I was very happy with that. I also observed that they wanted to take the story to another direction, in another direction. So, and that direction wasn't as appealing to me as the Danish version. So, I have a lot of respect for the American version because they did a lot of they made a lot of efforts to do a very good show, And from what I've heard, they have succeeded a lot with the show in the US. But you know, it was my baby. The Danish version was my baby, so of course my feelings belong to the Danish version. I'm happy that you have heard that it's more profound and detailed. It was a big thing back then when I wrote that, because nobody really thought it would be an international success. It was only, you know, with The Killing and Borgen and a few other shows, I think that outside Scandinavian, that people started, you know, watching Danish TV shows with subtitles, and before that they didn't actually. So I'm very proud of that show. Yes, it was. I think it turned out good.
Do you think in Scandinavia, do you have a special talent to write crime stories? Because Nordic noir, it's that huge literary current, and Nordic noir films also are very, I don't know, they had many fans around the world.
Yes, I think you're right. There's a very strong Scandinavian tradition of writing crime stories, and I think it has to do with the social feeling in the country. That, you know, the Scandinavian countries, they are almost all of them. They have this social democratic tradition. And when it comes to authors, I think that we are many who feel that it's not only a question about depicting crime. It's also a question about how society makes a criminal, how society gives birth to a criminal. You know, when you grow up, when you go from being a kid to adult, what happens to you? Where do you live? Do you live in a ghetto? Do you have any education and so on? What about the schools? And all those things matter. And I believe that many Scandinavian crime writers have been aware of that when they wrote. And of course, in modern times, it's especially Stieg Larsson, we all know for that. But there's a long tradition, I would say, in Scandinavia.
Yes, and I'm proud to say that we at Editura 3, one of our biggest collection is the Nordic Noir collection. We have Stieg Larsson and Jo Nesbø and
Yes.
many Scandinavian writers and Romanians really love.
Yeah.
Doing my research for this interview, I found a small quote in an interview for Evening Standard. You said, and I quote, "You can say Nordic noir is just splatter and blood, but it must also be about emotion, which is what I write about. Without it, there is no reason to write anything." It's very beautiful, but could you please explain to Romanian readers?
Well, it's just because, you know, crime stories to me is it's also about it's always about a mystery. Investigators are going to try to solve a mystery, but in order to feel something, you have to feel something for the victim or for the victim's family, and it's just, you know, in some literature and some movies and some TV series, you don't feel anything. You just feel it's bloody or it's scary or you don't feel anything. And I think that's very hollow. So I try to, when I write, I try to go after the emotion. I mean, what do I feel for the victim? What do I feel for the parents or for the relatives? And it was so in The Killing, of course, the first season especially, I guess, but in all three, that, you know, when it comes to crime, you usually just depict when the investigators, they come knocking on the door and then they leave to investigate, and then you'll never see the relatives again, the families affected and so on. And I thought, you know, it's an unrealistic picture. So it means a lot to me. And even now, when I try to write something new, it starts with an emotion, because if it's only in my head, then it doesn't work. It has no meaning. But if I feel it, if I feel the necessity to write it, it's a much more strong feeling, and I feel an urge to do it. Without the feeling, it has no meaning, I think.
Great. Which was the seed that began that become the Chestnut Man? The first idea. When did you have it?
The first idea was almost not an idea, because I just came to the kindergarten to pick up my youngest boy, and you know, kindergarten is just so innocent and fun to be in. It's a safe place, a comfort zone. And all the kids, they were sitting around the table. It was during the autumn, and they were sitting with these small chestnuts, and trying to assemble chestnuts into chestnut men. It's a Scandinavian tradition. You put chestnuts together with matches, and then you make small men or animals and so on. And they were all sitting there, the kids, including my own boy, and they were singing a Danish song. And I won't sing it here, of course, but it's a very, very nice song. But it's also a song saying something very childish, like "Chestnut man, do come in." Chestnut man, do come in. It's an invitation. The kids are inviting some unknown creature called the Chestnut Man inside, and they can even also call it the Apple Man, or the different names for it. And it gave me the chills, because it's when an adult hear something like that, we understand these things in another way, not only innocent. And that day I must have been, nervous or anxious or something, because to me it just felt creepy. I had the chills because of this Chestnut Man. And so it was just in the back of my head, something with the Chestnut Man. And I thought, the whole twilight zone between a kid and growing up. I remember being a child, being in my bed, being nervous about what's under the bed, in the closet, behind the door, and so on. That whole feeling came to me when I heard them talking and shouting and singing about the Chestnut Man. So that was just the icon. And then later on, by incident, actually, I read some reports about children in Denmark not being well treated, and the government trying to hide it and covering it up and so on. And then that became part of the whole investigation in Chestnut Man. So yeah.
It reminds me of a British author, Ruth Ware. She wrote In a Dark Wood, and Sparkle was the same, children's nursery rhyme. And it's very funny how, I don't know, nice song as a child,
Yes.
a terrifying message for an adult.
Yeah. But it is strange. It's a classic. I mean, I don't know why it is like that, but I don't know. Maybe it's because we don't want anything to happen to children. I mean, so when you hear a nursery, then you're thinking, it reminds me of my own childhood, the innocence and so on. And you don't want to spoil the innocence. You want it to be just like that. But it's of course an illusion, because we all grow up, and we grow up to to being, not so innocent. Some of us even being more corrupted, or anyway being sexual beings. And so everything from the childhood is kind of sacred and special, I think. I don't know, I've just always had a big heart for, maybe because of my own upbringing and so on, I've had a heart for children and how they feel.
Yeah. You use the present tense in the novel, and find it a very clever way to maintain the tension, because reading it, I had the impression that the chestnut man was behind my door.
Yes.
Feeling. But also, it was a step aside from the traditional crime writing. Choose that.
Well, there are two reasons, I think. First one is that when I write scripts for TV series or the movies, I always write in present tense. It just feels natural for me to do that. But the second reason is, of course, that it's much more dramatic, I think, because then you don't have any filter. Because if it's in past tense, then it has already happened, and the storyteller must be alive, because it's past tense and somebody's telling the story. So, but if it happens now, right now, then you cannot foresee how it's going to end. And I'm happy that you realized that, and you felt the effect, because that was very much intended. I just feel that when I read books in that way, so it felt natural to do.
Yeah, you put in the Chestnut Man and in the Killing some bits of your biography. Maybe every writer puts something from himself in his work, but what did you put it in the Chestnut Man, especially?
In the Chestnut Man?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, there's something that I tend to. I think there's a lot of me, but there's something that I tend to always come back to from also in the Killing, and it has to do with the families that have suffered some kind of loss. In the Chestnut Man, it's a family who firmly believes that their daughter was killed, and they are trying to live with those horrible feelings and things that happened. And I guess that many years from today, something happened in my family, which was just so sad, and it broke my heart back then. I was young, I was about 20, 21, and my mother died, and it was just, I felt everything falling apart. And it took a lot of years just to trying to assemble the family, to trying to get myself together. And I guess that feeling is just very deep inside me, and I feel very much for families who have suffered a loss, and who try to come back on their feet. I can see that as a pattern in the things I do. I have a lot of respect for that, because I know from my own experience how tough it is to try to get back on your feet. That is one thing. And then I think that, the investigators, they are also, many of them are, in some of my stories, they are kind of, they are kind of, they know, I think that we all have a dilemma here, because as human beings, we can do something, you know, we can help people, help each other, or we can just look the other way. And you know, there's something in me which is a daily dilemma. I mean, should we just, you know, sometimes turn our backs to the world and not care because you think that there are too many idiots? Or should we still try to, you know, do something about it? And I guess I'm just, you know, caught in that dilemma every day. So that I can see that too in my work.
I like very much the detectives, Naya and Mark Hess. They are very human. You can see their life stories beyond the police investigation, and I found it very touching for the reader to be able to see the human behind the professional. It was you wrote a great
No,
book.
that's good. No, that's good to hear because, yeah, well, it's difficult. Sometimes I think that there can be too much private life in a detective novel. So I try to keep a balance. And I think the most important thing, I think, when it comes to depicting characters is that you have to always realize that we all have our pain. We, you know, even detectives or, you know, me, you, everybody, we all have, you know, life is a battle, and sometimes it hurts. It's just the way life is. And I think it feels natural for me to talk about, also to write about, because that's how I feel about my own life. And I guess that's why my main characters often are like that, because that's the way I think about life, really.
The Chestnut Man has a sequel, and I hope Mr. Mark Hess will reach the Bucharest, because we don't know if we can welcome him or not.
Yeah.
Why did you choose Bucharest, and what do you know about Romania?
Well, because for Danish people, Bucharest is far away, and I wanted him to come far away. So he was, you know, far away from Copenhagen, because he's a kind of guy that exiles himself. I mean, he doesn't want to be close to home. He escapes. He's really a fugitive, you could say. So that was why, and also because there's something exotic about Bucharest. I mean, I've never been in Bucharest, but I imagine that you can, you know, being a Scandinavian, you lose yourself. I mean, because you're not, you don't know anything in Bucharest, and I thought that would be a very exotic place for Marquez to go to.
After the pandemic, we expect you to Bucharest, because we have a lot to offer. We have our share of nice places, great food, beautiful ladies, tremendous crimes. So you can find everything in Bucharest.
Okay, I will come someday. Yes.
Yes. Please consider this is an open invitation. Every time you want to come, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
How do you see the entertainment and publishing world after this pandemic? How do you see the future of these industries?
Well, actually, I think that, you know, so many layers of society is affected, but in this case, authors, they can write. I mean, they are not. So the publishers, they can publish books. So this line of business is not affected. I mean, to my knowledge, of course, there will be some things that cannot be done anymore, but you know, people, they would like to read stories and they would like to hear from each other's lives. So I think it won't affect that line of business. When it comes to movies and TV series, it's a more difficult situation because you cannot shoot movies or TV series now without having any kind of control. I mean, you have to have these tests all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, in of course, in movies and TV series, people, they argue, they stand very close, they fight, they make love, and so on in the stories. So, and if you cannot record that, if you cannot shoot that, then what's left to I mean, then you cannot do TV series and movies anymore. But I think, you know, I think anyway in Denmark is what I know of, is that we are trying now to just to avoid, you know, you can isolate a movie team or a TV series team. You can isolate people in the time that they use to shoot the scripts.
Mm-hmm.
And so you find new ways to do it. And I know for a fact that big media platforms like Amazon and Netflix and HBO and what they're called, they of course need more material now more than ever, because if there's a big world lockdown once more, then we all turn to Netflix, we all turn to HBO, we all turn to these big platforms just to watch what's going on in the fictive world. So in my line of work, at the moment, there's no big change. Everybody is, of course, waiting that we can start shooting again, that everything will be okay. But if not, I will try to write write books. So that's it. That said, of course, it's a terrible situation for the whole world, and I can still not comprehend really what's going on. I mean, it's so science fiction like. So yeah, I hope they'll have a cure within a year or something.
Let's hope for the best. Yes. Mr. Sveistrup, thank you very much for this interview. And as I told you, we are expecting you in Bucharest anytime you want.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.